They say, stone proves strength, a monument reaching for the sky, a wall stretching across the horizon, a fortress carved from the very earth. It feels permanent, doesn't it? Solid, unbreakable. But is it really? Stone can be broken, crushed by time, shattered by conflict. Stone can be burned, scarred by fire, until it is irrecognizable. It can be weathered away by wind and rain, slowly turning back into dust. It proves we were here, yes, but for how long? Now, think about paper. So fragile, it as easily turns to ash in a second. But what does paper prove? Paper proves memory, and memory is far more powerful than stone, because while a single piece of paper is weak, the idea written on it is not. Ideas are nimble. They can travel on the whispers of the wind, cross vast oceans in the minds of travelers, and leap from one generation to the next. Ideas can hide, lying dormant for centuries in a forgotten manuscript, waiting for the right person to find them. Ideas survive. They are the ultimate survivors. And for centuries, across the magnificent continent of Africa, ideas weren't just born. They were nurtured. They were preserved with incredible care. In the great libraries of Timbuktu, scrolls and books held knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy. In the courts of powerful empires, oral historians, the great memorized genealogies and epic poems that span generations. Their minds, the most sacred libraries of all. These ideas were organized, debated, and expanded upon. Scholars and thinkers gathered to challenge each other, to build upon old knowledge and create something new. They understood a fundamental truth. A civilization doesn't truly mature when it builds taller walls or stronger fortresses. A civilization matures when it builds minds, when it values the power of a question over the finality of a stone, because the greatest empires are not those of land and armies, but empires of the mind. The thoughts and stories from ancient Africa didn't just stay there. They traveled, they influenced. They became part of the world's shared story, proving that what we think, what we remember, and what we pass on is our true, lasting legacy. It's a power that can't be conquered, a treasure that can't be buried. It's the immortal power of an idea. They say, stone proves strength, a monument reaching for the sky, a wall stretching across the horizon, a fortress carved from the very earth. It feels permanent, doesn't it? Solid, unbreakable. But is it really? Stone can be broken, crushed by time, shattered by conflict. Stone can be burned, scarred by fire, until it is irrecognizable. It can be weathered away by wind and rain, slowly turning back into dust. It proves we were here, yes, but for how long? Now, think about paper. So fragile, it as easily turns to ash in a second. But what does paper prove? Paper proves memory, and memory is far more powerful than stone, because while a single piece of paper is weak, the idea written on it is not. Ideas are nimble. They can travel on the whispers of the wind, cross vast oceans in the minds of travelers, and leap from one generation to the next. Ideas can hide, lying dormant for centuries in a forgotten manuscript, waiting for the right person to find them. Ideas survive. They are the ultimate survivors. And for centuries, across the magnificent continent of Africa, ideas weren't just born. They were nurtured. They were preserved with incredible care. In the great libraries of Timbuktu, scrolls and books held knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy. In the courts of powerful empires, oral historians, the great memorized genealogies and epic poems that span generations. Their minds, the most sacred libraries of all. These ideas were organized, debated, and expanded upon. Scholars and thinkers gathered to challenge each other, to build upon old knowledge and create something new. They understood a fundamental truth. A civilization doesn't truly mature when it builds taller walls or stronger fortresses. A civilization matures when it builds minds, when it values the power of a question over the finality of a stone, because the greatest empires are not those of land and armies, but empires of the mind. The thoughts and stories from ancient Africa didn't just stay there. They traveled, they influenced. They became part of the world's shared story, proving that what we think, what we remember, and what we pass on is our true, lasting Legacy. It's a power that can't be conquered, a treasure that can't be buried. It's the immortal power of an idea. Have you ever heard a name that sounds like a myth? A place so legendary, so distant, it feels like it might have been dreamed up. 4 centuries in Europe, that name was Timbuktu. It was whispered in taverns and royal courts, a symbol of the impossibly remote, a city of gold at the edge of the world. But Timbuktu was never a myth. It was real, and its true treasure wasn't gold, but something far more valuable. Knowledge. Imagine a city, vibrant and alive, nestled where the great Niger River meets the vast Sahara Desert. This was the Timbuktu of the 14th and 15th centuries, a bustling crossroads of commerce, culture, and intellect. At its very heart stood magnificent institutions like the Sanka Mosque. But this wasn't just a place of prayer. It was one of the world's great centers of learning, a medieval university that drew scholars and students from all across Africa and the Middle East. At its peak, Timbuktu's universities hosted as many as 25,000 students. Think about that for a moment. That's a quarter of the city's entire population dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge, and the curriculum was astonishingly diverse. Students didn't just study theology and law. They delved deep into astronomy, mapping the stars from the heart of the desert. They debated complex mathematics, explored advanced medicine, and contemplated the great questions of philosophy, while much of Europe was just beginning to emerge from what we call the Dark Ages. African scholars in Timbuktu were engaged in sophisticated intellectual debates. They were writing extensive commentaries on classical texts, authoring original works, and creating one of the most remarkable literary traditions in history. Hundreds of thousands of manuscripts were produced, each one painstakingly copied by hand. These weren't just books, they were vessels of wisdom, passed down through generations. Private libraries flourished, with some scholars possessing thousands of volumes, a staggering collection for the time. So, let's correct the old narrative. Timbuktu was not a forgotten outpost at the end of the world. It was a beacon, a lighthouse of learning that shone brightly across the sands of the Sahara, illuminating the world with its intellectual fire. The scholars of Timbuktu weren't just preserving ancient knowledge. They were actively creating it, shaping the discourse of their time and leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire us today. The story of Timbuktu is a powerful reminder that history is bigger, richer, and more diverse than we're often taught. When you think of the world's great centers of learning, what names come to mind? Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard. These are incredible institutions, no doubt. But what if I told you that the story of higher education, the very concept of a university, has roots that run much deeper, and in a place you might not expect? We often hear about the legendary city of Timbuktu and its vast libraries, a beacon of knowledge in the Sahara. But Timbuktu was not an isolated miracle. It was part of a vibrant network of intellectual hubs that flourished across North Africa for centuries. Let's travel west to the city of Fez in Morocco. Here, nestled in the heart of the ancient Medina, stands the University of Al Quaraouiyine. This isn't just any university. Founded in the year 859 CE, it is recognized by UNESCO and the Guinness World Records as the oldest existing, continually operating educational institution in the world. For over 1,000 years, its halls have echoed with discussions on theology, grammar, rhetoric, logic, mathematics, astronomy, and even medicine. Think about that timeline. It was granting degrees long before many of Europe's most famous universities were even conceived. But the story gets even more remarkable. Who was the visionary behind this enduring legacy? It wasn't a king, a caliph, or a wealthy merchant lord. It was a woman, Fatima al-Fidi. Using her inheritance, she founded not just a mosque, but a full-fledged university complex, open to all. Let that sink in for a moment. In the 9th century, a woman's vision and determination created an institution of higher learning that has survived for more than 1,100 years. This isn't a historical footnote. This is a foundational chapter in the story of human knowledge. Yet, how often is this story told? How often is Fatima al-Firi's name mentioned alongside the founders of other great universities? It's a powerful reminder that history is often about where we choose to shine the spotlight. Genius isn't confined to one continent or one culture. Sometimes, it's just waiting in the wings, ready for its story to be brought back to the center of the stage. The legacy of Al Quaraouiyine proves that the quest for knowledge is a universal human endeavor, with brilliant minds lighting the way in every corner of the globe. Throughout every era of our shared history, when you think of ancient centers of learning, where does your mind go? Maybe Greece or Rome. What if I told you that some of the world's most sophisticated intellectual systems flourished across Africa for centuries, long before colonial contact? Let's talk about it. It's a common misconception to think of knowledge in pre-colonial Africa as somehow less formal, but the continent was home to a vast diversity of intellectual traditions. Yes, there were great urban universities, like the famous Sankar University in Timbuktu, which housed hundreds of thousands of manuscripts on everything from astronomy to law. These were bustling centers of written scholarship, drawing students and professors from across the Islamic world. But formal doesn't just mean written. Many African societies perfected a different kind of system, one that was oral and embodied. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking oral means simple or inferior. It was the exact opposite. Imagine a living library, a person whose mind was a carefully organized archive of history, law, and culture. These were the griots, the trained memory keepers. Being a griot wasn't just about telling good stories. It was a highly disciplined profession. From a young age, they underwent rigorous training to memorize centuries of genealogies, royal lineages, legal precedents, and diplomatic treaties. To recite this information flawlessly, without a single written note, required incredible intellectual structure and discipline. This wasn't just memory, it was a structured system of knowledge, preservation, and retrieval. That is a demonstration of pure intellectual rigor. This knowledge wasn't just for show, either. It was deeply integrated into the fabric of society. Education wasn't a separate activity you did in a classroom and then forgot about. The purpose of knowledge was application. It was practical. The historian's knowledge guided political decisions. The botanist's understanding of plants provided medicine. The artist's work encoded spiritual and philosophical truths. Knowledge was layered and holistic. The spiritual, the scientific, the historical, and the political weren't seen as separate fields. They were all interwoven, part of a complete understanding of the world and one's place in it. An elder might teach a child about a specific plant, explaining its medicinal properties, the stories and songs associated with it, its role in the local economy, and its spiritual significance, all in one lesson. The ultimate goal of this education wasn't personal prestige or accumulating degrees. It was about contributing to the well-being of the community. Knowledge was a communal resource, designed to solve real-world problems and ensure the survival and flourishing of the people. It was a system built on the idea that the smartest person wasn't the one who knew the most, but the one who could use their knowledge to best serve others. It's a powerful and profound way to think about what education is truly for. Ever wondered where our ideas of right and wrong really come from? For a long time, the story we've been told is that formal philosophy, the deep thinking about ethics and how to live, was born in ancient Greece, developed in Europe. But what if I told you that's only part of the story? What if I told you that for thousands of years, sophisticated and powerful ethical systems have thrived across the African continent? Today, we're going to explore a world of thought that challenges our modern assumptions and offers profound wisdom for today. Long before modern Western philosophy started neatly categorizing concepts like deontology or utilitarianism, African thought systems were grappling with the biggest questions of human existence. What does it mean to be a good person? What is it just society? But the answers they found were often rooted in a different understanding of humanity itself. Concepts like communal responsibility, the inherent dignity of every person, reciprocity, and the importance of balance weren't just abstract ideas. They were the very fabric of society. These weren't just rules to follow, but a way of seeing the world. One of the most powerful and well-known examples of this is the concept of Ubuntu. You might have heard the phrase, "I am because we are." It's a beautiful sentiment, but it's so much more than a feel-good quote. Ubuntu is a complex philosophy of interconnected humanity. It argues that a person becomes a person through other people. It's not about losing your individuality in a collective blob, and it's certainly not a sign of weakness. Instead, think of it as a form of relational intelligence. It's the deep understanding that our survival, our happiness, and our flourishing are not solo projects. They are fundamentally shared experiences. My well-being is tied to your well-being, and yours to mine. This isn't some primitive or simple form of morality. It's an incredibly sophisticated social theory that has guided communities for centuries. When a society operates on the principle of Ubuntu, it redefines everything. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about restoring balance and healing relationships. Responsibility isn't just about personal accountability. It's about our duty to the entire community, past, present, and future. Ubuntu asks the same questions every great philosophical tradition does. What is a person? What is justice? What is responsibility? But it provides answers that are found not in isolation, but through relationship, community, and shared humanity. That isn't just an alternative way of thinking. That is true philosophical depth. It's a powerful reminder that there are many wells of wisdom to draw from, and the African continent holds some of the deepest. Have you ever wondered what really holds a civilization together? It's not just stone walls or powerful armies. It's something far more profound, something hidden within ancient manuscripts and whispered through oral traditions. When we look closely at these records, we discover something amazing. Structured legal systems already in place thousands of years ago. Imagine detailed processes for trade arbitration, ensuring fairness between merchants separated by vast deserts and seas. This wasn't just about laws. We see medical treatments, meticulously cataloged by symptom, a primitive but systematic approach to healing. We find astronomical tables, calculated with a precision that's just mind-boggling for their time. This wasn't guesswork. This was data. This was the birth of bureaucratic intelligence. It's a specific way of thinking, an administrative mindset that allows societies to organize on a massive scale. Think about the sheer complexity of regulating commerce across continents, of standardizing weights, measures, and practices, so that a deal made in one city would be honored in another. How do you do that? You codify the rules. You write them down. You teach them. You enforce them. None of this complex organization just appears out of thin air. It relies entirely on a hidden framework, what we might call a cognitive infrastructure. This infrastructure is built by people. It requires trained scholars, individuals dedicated to learning, reading, and writing. But training alone isn't enough. It requires mentorship, the passing of knowledge from an experienced master to an eager student. It's this chain of mentorship that ensures generational continuity, making sure that hard-won wisdom isn't lost with the passing of a single lifetime. So, the next time you think about the great empires of the past, remember the invisible engine that powered them. It wasn't just bronze and stone. It was the power of organized thought, of shared knowledge, of systems designed to outlast any single individual. It's the story of how we learn to build not just cities, but societies. It's the foundation upon which our own world is built. Ever wonder why the story of Africa often starts with struggle, not with scholarship? Let's talk about a history that's been deliberately hidden. Imagine a time, centuries ago, when Africa was home to some of the world's most brilliant centers of learning. Picture the University of Sankor in Timbuktu, a beacon of knowledge, drawing scholars from all over the globe, with libraries holding hundreds of thousands of manuscripts on astronomy, medicine, law, and philosophy. Think of the ancient libraries in Alexandria, Egypt, a legendary hub of intellectual life. This isn't fantasy, it's documented history. Africa wasn't just a continent of kingdoms and trade. It was a continent of thinkers, innovators, and educators. So why isn't this common knowledge? Why isn't the story of Sankar as famous as Oxford or Bologna? The answer is simple and uncomfortable. Intellectual dominance is power. If the world acknowledges that Africa was a historic center of scholarship, a place where people traveled to for education, then the entire narrative of civilizing missions collapses. That justification, used for centuries to dominate and exploit, suddenly looks very hollow. It was a story crafted to maintain a certain world order, a hierarchy that placed one group above another. If you accept that Africa was educating thousands of students centuries ago, then the idea of intellectual dependency just dissolves. The notion that Africa needed to be taught how to think, to govern, how to be modern, becomes absurd. If you recognize that African civilizations produced universities and vast libraries long before many European nations even existed, then that carefully constructed hierarchy must be reconsidered. And here's the thing about power. It rarely surrenders its narrative willingly. It protects its story because that story is the foundation of its control. To maintain this skewed narrative, the great African libraries were ignored. The legacies of their scholars were sidelined. The priceless manuscripts were left underfunded, scattered, or lost. History was rewritten, not with lies, but with strategic omissions. By simply leaving out the parts that didn't fit the desired story, a new, distorted reality was created and taught for generations. It was a systematic suppression of intellectual history, an academic silencing that served a political purpose. The goal was to control the past to legitimize the present. But truth has weight. It possesses a gravity that can't be denied forever. You can bury it, ignore it, and try to forget it. But buried truth eventually Today, dedicated historians, archaeologists, and scholars, many of them African, are piecing together this erased history. They are digitizing manuscripts, translating ancient texts, and telling the world what was lost. The story of Africa's intellectual heritage is returning, not as a myth, but as a fact demanding its rightful place in our shared human story. And that is a story worth listening to. Let's talk about history. When you think of ancient civilizations and their groundbreaking achievements, what comes to mind? The pyramids of Giza. Maybe that's a great start. But it's just the tip of the iceberg. For too long, the story of Africa has been told with entire chapters missing, painting a picture of a continent waiting to be discovered. But the truth is, Africa wasn't waiting for anything. It was building, creating, and leading. From the very beginning, a pattern of brilliance emerges across the continent. Let's look at architecture. Beyond the iconic structures of ancient Egypt, we have the incredible rock-hewn churches of Lalibela in Ethiopia, carved from single stones, and the magnificent ruins of Great Zimbabwe, a medieval city whose walls were built without a single drop of mortar. These aren't just buildings. They are masterpieces of engineering and artistry that have stood for centuries. Then there's the sky. While Europe was still figuring things out, African astronomers were mapping the cosmos. The Dogon people of Mali, for instance, had knowledge of the star Sirius B, a star invisible to the naked eye. Long before Western astronomers confirmed its existence, they understood complex celestial cycles, creating calendars and navigation systems that were centuries ahead of their time. This wasn't luck, it was sophisticated, generational science. And what about trade? Forget the narrative of isolated villages. Vast and complex trade networks crisscrossed the continent. Cities like Timbuktu and Jen in the Malian Empire were bustling centers of commerce, connecting West Africa to Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Gold, salt, ivory, and ideas flowed freely along these routes, creating immense wealth and fostering cultural exchange. This wasn't simple barter. It was international business on an epic scale. The innovation didn't stop there. African societies were pioneers in metallurgy. The Haya people of what is now Tanzania were smelting steel in advanced blast furnaces over 1,500 years ago, reaching temperatures that European technology wouldn't match for centuries. This mastery of metal wasn't just for tools and weapons. It was a cornerstone of their economy and society. Of course, a civilization's true richness lies in its thoughts and words. Africa was a continent of profound literature and philosophy. From the epic oral traditions of griots, who preserved history and story and song, to the thousands of ancient manuscripts found in Timbuktu covering law, medicine, and ethics, Africa was speaking, writing, and debating. In cities like Alexandria and Fez, some of the world's oldest universities were founded, like the University of Al Quaraouiyine, drawing scholars from all over the globe. So, the pattern is crystal clear. From architecture to astronomy, trade to metallurgy, literature to higher education, Africa was not waiting for enlightenment. It was generating it. It was not waiting to be taught. It was teaching. It was not silent. It was innovating, preserving, and shaping the course of human history across centuries. It's a powerful legacy, one that we are only just beginning to fully appreciate. What does it take to prove a continent's genius? Let's think about it. A continent that builds pyramids, marvels of architecture that touch the sky, proves its engineering prowess. A continent that maps the stars, navigating the cosmos with incredible precision, proves its deep understanding of science. These are monumental achievements, etched into stone and written in the heavens. They speak of power, of intellect, of mastery over the physical world. But what about a continent that builds universities? This proves something else entirely. It proves continuity. It proves a conscious, deliberate intention to pass wisdom from one generation to the next. It proves profound self-awareness, an understanding that true strength isn't just in what you can build or discover, but in what you can preserve and grow. Because when a civilization invests in knowledge, what it's really doing is investing in its future. It's planting seeds for a forest it may never see, trusting that the shade will benefit those who come after. This is the story of Africa, a story that often gets overlooked. Africa does not need to prove its genius to the world today. It already has, time and time again. Its legendary libraries, like the one in Alexandria or Timbuktu, were beacons of learning for the ancient world. Its brilliant scholars, whose ideas traveled across continents, have already made their mark. Its rich and diverse philosophies, exploring the very nature of existence and community, have already shaped human thought. And here's the most powerful part of the story. Even when those pages were burned, even when priceless archives were looted and scattered, even when historical narratives were deliberately distorted to tell a different, lesser story, the memory endured. The spirit of that knowledge survived. It was carried in oral traditions, in art, in the very fabric of societies. Why? Because genius that is rooted so deeply, that is so integral to a people's identity, cannot be erased. It can be suppressed, it can be hidden, it can be ignored, but it can never be truly destroyed. It can only be delayed. The intellectual heritage of Africa is not a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing force. It's a wellspring of wisdom that continues to bubble to the surface, reminding us that the pursuit of knowledge is one of humanity's most enduring and noble quests. The pyramids stand as a testament to what was built. The star charts showed what was known, but the universities, the libraries, the scholars, they represent a promise of a future built on the unshakable foundation of its own enduring genius.